is to undertake policy research, which is both commissioned as well as proactive research, as well as capacity building activities. And in terms of this initiative, which was the project that was running from March 2018 to December 2018, it's focusing on activities of research, dissemination in a number of themes. One of the themes in the area of training is training on macroeconomic modeling, and that work has already been carried out and is still being undertaken with the Ministry of Finance. We had a DSG training workshop. Then the other element of the exercise was to facilitate economic dialogues, particularly relating to industrial policy in Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe has been in debt distress since 2000. The reason being Zimbabwe defaulted to pay some debt payments to the international finance institutions. So what happened was that IMF then decided to close the window which was there so Zimbabwe became ineligible for the general resources account of the IMF financing window. That was in 2001, and the other international financial institutions also followed suit. The World Bank, the African Development Bank, which made Zimbabwe ineligible to borrow new debt. So this led to a low growth trajectory of the economy. Like if you look at the period 2000 to 2008, when Zimbabwe had an economic crisis, this also had something to do with the debt, which made it almost impossible to get some concessionary funding for maybe issues to do with the infrastructure, which suffered some deficiencies due to that ineligibility to borrow to finance the infrastructure, and this affected the country's debt carrying capacity and also the ability of the country to service the debt. We are just going to look at the drivers of debt accumulation. What are the drivers of debt? What really drives the debt in Zimbabwe? And we also try to come up with the implications of the proposed government arrears clearance strategy on debt sustainability, economic growth, and social spending. Arrears constituted 5.4 billion, which is about 77.4% of the debt. So what it means is, like if we remove the arrears, or if we're going to clear the arrears, the real debt, the debt for Zimbabwe is only 1.8 billion. If we look at maybe external debt, which is owed to the bilateral creditors, it's about 42% of the external debt. And to the multilateral creditors, it's about 32.9% of the external debt. If we look maybe at the debt to GDP ratio, maybe if we look from 1999 to 2017, we can see that maybe from around 2000 to 2008, debt has been rising, and we have registered a peak in 2005 and also in 2008. But generally, you can say between 2000 and 2008, debt was increasing. This was the period of the economic crisis, and as we can see that there's like some kind of relationship. When the economy is struggling, it was failing to maybe generate enough exports to service the debt, and so debt was growing. But as we introduced the multi-currency regime, the debt is still unsustainable, but it stabilized. IMF and World Bank confirmed that about for all the countries that took the route of the EPIC, it managed to reduce their debt by about 90%, which is really a positive. But if you look at maybe experience of countries like Zambia, they benefited from a program, and just a year after they benefited, the debt, it started to rise up to levels which were really high, and they had to also to undergo another program of the enhanced HIPIC program. So what it means is that going into this HIPIC does not really guarantee that once you clear the arrears, once you clear the debt, then going forward, the debt will be sustainable. If you look at the next option, which is the debt restructuring, this option, it requires that a country defers the payment obligations without permanently resolving the country's external debt problems. You just restructure the debt, but you still have to repay. You still have the obligation to pay the debt, although maybe you kind of in the short term do not pay the debt. And also there's that requirement of the need to resume the operation, the IMF programs in the if the country has to opt for this program. And also this program, it will bring in the much needed maybe bridging finance, which will let the country maybe focus on other growth initiatives before starting to repay the arrears.
On this subject, numbers fly around and they might be very different. And also we, as she has highlighted, we utilized the official statistics that we received up to 2017, but I think December 2017. But since then, things have been moving, very dynamic, and some of the figures have since changed, but we have not factored those in. And I think we'll also hear from yourselves from where we are sitting, how you find the analysis as has been done, if there is any new information that we think we might want to hear from you.
I saw the way you were defining restructuring. If you look at debt restructuring, it has many elements, which includes rescheduling, it includes forgiveness, it includes swaps, it includes issues of refinancing. So when you are referring to debt restructuring, you need to be very clear which type of restructuring you're actually proposing. And from what I was probably picking, you're probably talking of a bit of refinancing where you convert the current debt, and to some extent you're also talking of rescheduling. So in terms of your paper, you probably need to be clear on the kind of restructuring you're actually implying. Then the last issue is, I think you're focusing more on external, but domestic is the real issue now. If you look at the accumulation of arrears at the moment is high, and we have more, which is actually more than 90 days, which have become debt. We also need, I think the paper should also talk a bit on how you propose government to actually address the domestic arrears as well. I think because it's really become an important thing.
Initially we wanted to do our analysis separately between the domestic debt and external debt. But I think the comment that came from my sister that I think we need to take cognizance of the growing domestic debt, especially in relation to the ratios, debt to GDP. You know, the Constitution and the Debt Management Act does not specify whether the benchmarks should be on domestic debt or external debt or both. But my take is that it is on both, because domestic debt and external debt, their implications are the same. Then the other issue is that I think we know in the SADC region, the debt to GDP ratio threshold is 60%, and Zimbabwe has moved it a bit by 10%, I think, considering our indebtedness by the point, or by the time we came up with our Debt Management Act, and we pushed it to 70%. So if we combine domestic debt and external debt, at the moment it's way above the 70% threshold. And still, probably you have to talk about the inherent desire by the policymakers to not to respect the Constitution by not respecting the limits on government borrowing and state loans, especially the assumption of the other debts from the RBZ and the Zisco Steel. I think it's also adding up to the total debt. Then my other comment is in relation to the rebasing. I think currently there's a discourse around debasing of the economy, rebasing of the economy. I think they need to rebase the economy, which means our GDP is going to increase. I think politically it will be good for the country because you say your debt to GDP ratio is going to go down. And if you consider that, then it means even the HIPIC scenario is out, and all the other scenarios, you consider yourselves as a very rich country. And there's that paradox where you are saying our economy has been going down since 2000. And at the same time, you are saying that we need to rebase our economy and then increase the GDP. Then, you know, that dynamic, I think, I don't know what the government is doing about that. Then what I picked from your conversation, which is in sync with what we are doing at ZimCode, is that we made an assessment of the available options for debt cancellation, and we realized that the only option for Zimbabwe is a hybrid model, which brings in the different components we have, because our debt situation is very unique, and we need to come up with our own homegrown solution to our debt problem. Rather than picking the HIPIC, it doesn't work, we pick another one, it doesn't work. And I think we need to come up with our own model. And as one of the recommendations, the government should do consultations. We should come up with our models which citizens have to contribute to. I think the recent case of the Vision 2030, which is a Washington DC document, should not be the case. Even the Lima, it's a Lima document, not a Zimbabwean document.
We would want to know the specific discount factor that you use.
Okay.
And I had also what she said about the specific advice to government, because I thought from the paper you are not telling the government to do anything. They would be very confused. So it has to come out exactly the hybrid. What is it? How does it work? How do they implement it? So that if they have to adopt it, they can actually then be able to implement that program. Yeah, domestic debt has already been raised, but more importantly, this, up to now, this debt was being borrowed in US dollars. And the interests are actually much higher than some of the external debt. So I think it is very important. It was mentioned at 9, not 7.5. If you go to the statements that were made last week, it's actually 9 billion. And that's very critical. So when you are revising your numbers, I think there is a bit of work to include that domestic debt, and more so that it is in US dollars. When you carry out the analysis on the debt, do you also consider how the borrowed money was used? Where was the money going? I think it would be important to also look at that. Finally, I wanted to know whether the HIPIC option was still available. I think you mentioned something about 2004, and the countries that actually went through that process, 36 of them. I think in some way in the documents of the IMF and so forth, there is a footnote that probably Zimbabwe could be considered as an IDA only country, and therefore qualify even when it is no longer applicable. Thank you.
In your introduction, you mentioned the things relating to how the debt came about, for example, the issue of defaulting. And then also, when we went to your conclusion, you mentioned most of the things that are kind of political economic issues, like the issue of trying to get in strong international support for debt forgiveness. To me, that is addressed from the political front, international politics. So I just want to ask whether in your study you have done an analysis as to what kind of correlation exists between the international politics front and the economic front. For example, the issue of sanctions and versus the issue of defaulting, to say whether there is a correlation, so that when you make recommendations, then they would know whether to approach it from an external relations front or from an external debt front, whereby they will be approaching the multilateral institutions, not necessarily worrying much about the international politics.
I am only sympathetic to the team that you might have to go back to the drawing board, because as you concluded your work, the GDP was rebased, and therefore you cannot present the report as it is now with the options and the analysis with the new GDP figures. I was just doing a quick dirty work. If you are looking at GDP of 18 billion and a debt of 17 billion, that ratio comes to 94. Now that the GDP is 25.6, I think, the value comes to 66, which means everything else changes. So it means you have to go back to the drawing board. And that does not only go with the figures, it goes with the analysis. Because some of the options you looked at, like the HIPIC options and so on and so forth, they will have to change depending on the figures, how they come out. Now, having done that, the conclusions, not sure that they will change drastically, because as colleagues have pointed out, it seems all of them lead to a dead end. And I think that is why you said, let's look for a hybrid. If everything leads to a dead end, then let's pick a bit of a good thing here, then a bit of a good thing here. But I think you're not so clear on where you pick that good thing from. Whether you do a bit of restructuring with who, and then a bit of some HIPIC with who, and so on and so forth. But let that clarity come after the report is reworked. Now, two things caught my attention. One is debt forgiveness and cancellation. That would be the easiest option, I think, for Zimbabwe. And I think that is how HIPIC came about, that people wanted debt to be forgiven and cancelled and so on and so forth. But listening to and reading the literature, particularly about Zimbabwe, I don't want to say Zimbabwe is such a bad country. Zimbabwe is a very good country, by the way. I'm not sure how long it will take to have that discussion concluded. So you may have to revisit that. Not sure how long it will take to have that discussion about cancellation and forgiveness. What I've heard, and I think he asked whether HIPIC is still on the table, is a possibility of building something which is HIPIC-like, not quite HIPIC. Something which is HIPIC-like, but which can be worked first by the government and then agreed with the development partners. So maybe that is the discussion we need to explore. There are development partners who have been talking about that. Unfortunately, they are not here. So I think if you approach them, they must have put together some papers which you can look at to see exactly what they are describing as HIPIC-like. And then you can draw from that. As to whether HIPIC will be available for Zimbabwe or not, again, after the data is reworked, the report is reworked, then you can come to that conclusion whether it is available, if it is still available for Zimbabwe. Otherwise, I think so far so good. The report is very good. I hope you will share with us copies. And the effort is much appreciated. For the LAB, I'm only hoping that the minister promised 6 months, and we are waiting our mouth saying, finally in 6 months we will get our money paid. So we are hoping, since the analysis was much about the World Bank, not LAB, I'm hoping ours is already out of the way.